Okay, so I get to do this like 9 times. Welcome to the, I'm getting old, Board of Directors meeting for the West River Modified Union Education District. Tonight we'll be doing our reorganization. So the first agenda item is we're going to call to order, but before I go into any elections of the chairperson, so I can pass off the meeting, I'd like everybody on the board to introduce themselves to the camera and the public. I'll start though. I'm the Superintendent, Bill Anton.
Alicia O'Donnell Brookline.
Emily Long, Newfane.
Lindsay Bertram, Newfane.
Trish Scott, Townsend.
Joe Winrick from Townsend.
Nancy Dyke, Wyndham.
Al Clausen, Townsend.
Ken McFadden, Newfane.
Christina Robinson, Jamaica.
Mike Foley, Townsend.
Drew Hazelton, Jamaica.
And just as a point of emphasis, this year is a critically important year for these 11 people who are going to be shaping an education district for over 600 students. And no pressure, but you're going to be setting the foundation for an entire generation of students, families, and communities. So I really do appreciate the opportunity to work with you, and I appreciate that you have all volunteered to craft what we hope will be a world-class education for all of our students. So thank you. My first order of business today is to take a nominations for the election of a chairperson for your board. Do I
nominate Joe Winrick?
All right, I have one So I've learned through all this, there does not have to be a second.
Well, you got one
For
anyway.
nominations. So I have one nomination for Joe Winrick for the chair. Do I hear any other nominations? All right, hearing none, all eligible voters that have been sworn in, which we have 10 on the board tonight, all those in favor of Joe Winrich being the chair of the West River Modified Union Education District, say so by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It is my pleasure to hand over the meeting to you, Mr. Winrich.
Gosh, thanks. Okay, thank you. I appreciate the support. This is important and exciting work that we're all doing, and I'm happy to be a part of it. So next, we would elect a vice chair who would fill in for the chair if they're not here. They occasionally run a meeting, and then as an officer, there are a couple of other things you get involved in. Any nominations for
I'd
vice
like
chair?
to nominate Al Clausen.
Any other nominations? All right. Hearing none, all in favor of Al Clausen as vice chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. All right, congratulations, Al. And
Everybody.
we need a clerk. Are there any nominations for clerk?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Drew Hazelton.
Are there any other nominations?
You're welcome.
All right. All in favor of Drew Hazelton as clerk, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I was waiting for Drew. Abstentions? All right. The ayes.
I'm going to have a flat tire.
The ayes appear to have, the ayes appear to have that. The ayes do have that as well. All right. Well, congratulations, officers. We need to have some authorized signatures for it's banking purposes, right, Bill? Correct. In the past, this board has had the officers as the authorized signatories. You occasionally have to sign something for the bank.
Is this separate from the clerk's signature?
Yes.
And I'll make a motion to appoint the officers for the authorized signatures.
Okay. That one does need a second.
I'll second that.
All right. It's been moved and seconded to appoint the officers. Is there any discussion on that motion? All right. Then all in favor of having the officers as the authorized signatories, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. We need to select a paper of record for publication of our official warnings. I believe currently that is the Common.
We did two.
We,
so-
we do the common and the reformer?
Because the Commons is a weekly,
Right.
and so we did the Commons as our first choice, and then anything that had to be done with under a week was the reform.
I'll
Okay.
make that motion.
Okay.
Second.
All right, any discussion on that motion? All right, all in favor of having the common as the first paper, the commons as the first paper of record with a reformer as a backup for short notice, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. All right, we traditionally set our meeting dates and times. Right now, we're officially the third Monday of every month at 7. Typically, we're at Leland and Gray, but there are cops swarming the high school tonight, so, and a training exercise, so we're kicked out. We could discuss changing that if we get a motion to make it that.
I'd like to make a motion to keep it the third Monday at 7 PM at Leland and Gray until we decide whether or not we're going to move it from school to school at one point. I believe we were discussing that last year.
Yes, and I think we probably will discuss that this year.
Okay.
Is there a second for that? Second. Thank you, Drew. All right, anybody want to discuss any of that right now, or just for now, we'll have it the third Monday, 7 o'clock, Leland and Gray, and then when we're ready to start rotating the meetings, we can just do that.
I was just wondering if we could have on record where we are going to post the agendas and that kind of stuff.
So right now, we post all agendas on the WCSU site, and we send a copy to all the schools and to each individual town clerk.
I would like to make a motion that we keep it that way.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Well, it should be on record that that's where they're supposed to be.
Sure, you can ask a question.
I'll second it. What? I didn't quite, if
Well,
you
can we
want, but I'll ask.
get that second motion while we have the first motion on the floor?
I actually want to question this, so.
Okay.
You mentioned that you send them to the schools. Do they actually post them? Because we actually are required to physically post them too.
I am confident that the physical
Okay.
posting
Only-
occurs.
I think we have 3 places where we need to physically post.
Uh,
So if Leland and Gray physically posts, Wyndham Central physically posts, then we just need one other school to physically post.
I
Maybe
can
they all
assure you,
do.
Townsend
Yeah, I'm
officially.
positive.
Excellent. That's
Well,
all
there
I
you
was
go.
checking.
Yep.
That's all I was checking, to make sure they physically
We
post
try
them
to
as
make
well.
sure we go above and beyond.
That's excellent. Thank you so much.
Okay.
So I'll second it. You need a second.
Well, I think, yeah, I'm fuzzy on Roberts, don't make me dig him out. Don't we have to deal with the motion about about meeting dates and times first?
Oh, I
Because
thought
it's
that
been
was-
moved and seconded, and then we can address the other motion.
I'm sorry, I thought that
Um,
was what we were on.
Yeah, I think we have to actually,
Go for it.
okay, so it's been moved and seconded to continue having our meetings on the third Monday at 7 PM at Leland and Gray. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Well,
Opposed?
until we decide to rotate it from school to school.
Right,
Okay.
certainly.
Can I
Aye.
ask a question about that?
Yes?
Sorry. Can't we rotate and still stay in the same? I'm a little concerned about changing the time, the date of the meeting, the day of the week of the meeting on a regular basis, just because we're rotating. Why can't we rotate school to school and still stay on the same Monday?
No, that's fine. I'm
Yeah, I
fine
think it
with
would
that.
stay third Monday,
So
but it
then
would just
wouldn't
be in a different
change
place,
it-
like
So the
tonight.
motion doesn't say, it just says the date, and, because Ken's twice now said something about move, until we move, and we would take it's a big change for a unified union school district like ours to change the date.
No, I just
Okay.
meant until we rotate schools,
Okay, thank you.
that it's
Okay.
at Leland and
So
Gray.
just to clarify, the date stays
Just
third
location.
Monday, 7 PM, and it is Leland and Gray now, but we are planning at some point to start rotating school to school within the larger education district.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's the plan. I think we actually got that one passed, right? Any opposition? All right, that motion carries. The next motion that was made and seconded was to establish the places where the meeting agendas are posted, which is Wyndham Central and Leland and Gray and all the elementary schools, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
and At a
And
minimum.
town clerk's offices.
And town clerk's offices?
We
Okay.
do send it to all the town clerks, but we have to, at a minimum, we have to have them at 3.
Right,
And so
okay.
you can make sure that it's Leland and Gray, Townsend Elementary, and the WCSU office as the minimum of 3.
Okay. So, all in favor of, any discussion on that motion, folks? All right, all in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, the motion carries. We need to appoint a truant officer. Bill, that's currently Wyndham County Sheriff, right?
And that is who I would recommend as, again.
I'd make a motion to continue with the Wyndham County Sheriff's Department.
Second.
You seconded that?
Yeah.
Any discussion on that motion? Drew?
We don't have any students.
I think it's a formality.
You're saying for the next year, we don't actually have any students. So
That is a good point.
Yes.
They only charge you when they come, so.
I would still do it just in case something comes up and I need a truant officer for this particular board.
I didn't know if the truant officer was for board members.
Make your meetings.
Miss Free, we're
It's a very valid point.
All right, so we'll go with the Wyndham County Sheriff, but acknowledge the fact that we're not going to give them a lot of work. All in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right. We don't need any of the things with WCSU representatives because we don't have any representation on the WCSU board. Okay, so now we'll bounce back up to item 2. Do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda? There's one minor correction. Under the consent agenda, all the minutes are dated in this year, and the December minutes are actually December of 17. So the last set of minutes is 12, 18, 17. Okay. Members of the public, folks, this is your time. Anything you want to bring to the attention of the board that, otherwise you're welcome to just sit here and participate. Yes, Rick?
I'm going to counterpoint that piece of correspondence that comes up next.
Okay. Anything else, folks? Yes?
Okay, so I think, Bill, you mentioned that the issues that I wanted to bring up are going to be
That's under
under
number
correspondence.
4,
And
yeah.
Okay. So that's-
Right. Okay, so, all right. So now, moving to correspondence, if anyone needs a copy, I have one extra one here. It was a link in your agenda. I can actually read it. Yeah, there we go. So, we've been asked to have a discussion about moving the budget vote to town meeting day and adding language to the ballot indicating the difference between the proposed budget and the current year's budget. The author of the letter is saying that this is to increase voter participation and help voters be more clearly informed about the budget, since the equalized pupil spending percentage language can be confused as a budget increase when there is actually a decrease. Apparently there was a non-binding vote taken, but I'm not really sure when. That at a 90-person meeting that it doesn't say when it was. And according to some research done by the author of the letter, Gerald, the Secretary of State said that this is the time to make these changes. The language change I know is statutory, so those changes I assume would have to come from the legislature. But that's what we've been asked to do. I think since the letter is from Gerald, I would let her speak to it, and then I guess Rick is here to speak to that as well, and then we can have a discussion, and we may end up putting it on the agenda further down, as this is something we'd probably want to bring to the public at our annual meeting, which is on the agenda for tonight and happens in April. So, Gerald?
Okay, good. I'm Gerald Julian Cisse, and I am a resident of South Newfane. And as Joe mentioned, over the years, various citizens have also commented about the low voter turnout on the budget meeting days. Quite often we have a snowstorm, but aside from that, that generally in 5 towns voting, we often don't have more than about 250, 270 voters in 5 towns. Whereas if we were to move it to the actual, still by Australian ballot, but on town meeting day, then we would increase voter turnout, because then folks who are coming to town meeting, as well as those who are just coming to vote, even if they don't stay, the polls are open just as they normally would be, 9 to 7. And so it's a way of being able to increase that voter turnout. Generally, just even in Newfane alone, there's often, when we do a vote, there's around 200 or so people in attendance. The second piece of that would be to add language to the actual ballot, and that would be just to add the actual difference between the proposed budget and the current year's budget, because the way it is stated right now is that it tells us what the dollar amount for the proposed budget is, and then it says what that means as far as the equalized pupil spending, and that it often is given as a percentage. So in the last few years, this year I think it was a 6% increase, perhaps somewhere around that. The previous year it was a 12% increase, and many people that I talk to who don't follow the equalized pupil spending formula think it's an actual increase in the budget, when in fact the previous year it was only an increase of 0.002%. This past year, when it was the equalized pupil spending was about 6% of an increase, the actual budget, the proposed versus the current, was a decrease of 0.6%. So if people are, trying to figure out, well, gee, does that mean the budget's going up 12%? I think it would be, we would have a more informed voting citizenry if they knew the difference and could include that extra piece of information. And yes, it is through the legislature. When I talked to, his name is J.P. Isabel, and he works for the voting department, the elections department at the Secretary of State's office. And he said that it would have to be run through the legislature because it is a statute. But now is the time for any of that to be brought up, because it is, all the schools are merging, or through Act 46, not all schools, but this is the time to do it at the annual meeting. So to bring up that conversation now. Changing the date to town meeting, that can be decided, I believe, by the school board, by you folks now. Again, this is the time to do that. And as far as the meeting that I mentioned where there was 90 people, that was at our most recent town meeting. And I only brought it up just to get a sense, how do people feel? And I asked, are people confused by the way the ballot reads? Yes. Would they think it would be a smart idea to just move it for greater participation in voting, move it to town meeting? I know that other school districts do this. We traditionally have done it back in February. But if other schools are able to do it, other school districts are able to do it, well, what is our reason that we can't? So it was at town meeting, we just took a non-binding vote. Who would be interested in asking this board to pursue the idea of it? So that's it. Yes.
Did you have somebody there from the school board at the meeting?
At the town meeting?
Okay.
That's what I brought up, because that's what I told them. I just told them I have the notes in my car.
Well, you were there, Ken.
Yes.
Yeah, and, yeah, just school
I was
board.
there also.
You were there?
Yep.
And Emily, you had already left.
So
This was a little bit
as
later.
Joe mentioned, that is by statute,
Yes.
the language of that.
Right.
So really, it's up to us as board members to kind of further explain, what does that mean? Go to the 3-year comparison and clarify some of those things that you're talking about. So I think that's probably what needs to be done.
Right.
I agree, it's kind of ambiguous until you get the full picture by looking a little deeper.
And plus, when your tax bills come out, it doesn't make it any easier because the governor was nice enough to have, what was it, 9 cents to the town rate, the school tax rate?
So that was the original prediction, but there's been a lot of
We don't know yet.
mechanics since then.
You mentioned the advantages of voting on town meeting day. Does anybody know of any downsides to this? Are there any disadvantages to moving it to town meeting day that we might not be thinking about off the top of our heads?
Well,
I'm going to handle that, believe me.
You know what? Why don't you speak to this since you're ready to go?
Okay, I was gonna let the board ask their questions first, but, I'm sorry.
Along with that question, I really need to hear from the administration on this, the superintendent and the business office, which I'm sure you can speak for the business
Yeah.
office as well.
Yeah, I would just say this was my first time participating in a commingled vote, which is under the Article 12, Article of Agreement, that we are required to do a commingled vote for our at-large positions and for our budget. And to watch just having 2 positions be elected from 7:15, Joe and I were there, till 9:15, after a regular day of town meeting voting. It is an enormous burden for the town clerks. And having seen it firsthand, you have to really consider what you're asking of the individuals from each of your 5 towns to participate in something like that. I think that you have a couple things going to your advantage of you have a community that has been voting not on town meeting for a union school budget for as long as I've been here. And I'm a short timer, so that's just been a decade. So there's a habit of that, and there's an expectation of that. Gerald's correct that you guys get to decide when that happens, and I think that from my business office recommendation, it would definitely not be before town meeting, and it would not be the week after town meeting, but it would be sometime right around when you guys have set your annual meeting, so that it would be an opportunity at town meeting to inform and answer questions at individual town meetings, and then about 10 days later or 14 days later, before the vote, you would have this informational meeting, so that you'd have individual opportunities at the town level to talk about the budget. You'd have an opportunity at the board level to talk about the budget, and then a week later, you could actually have the vote. It is something that you guys can change over time. But I would just say from my personal experience of seeing what the town clerks have to go through on town meeting voting day, it is a enormous ask of them.
Can I add to that? In Newfane, we always do Australian ballot, so it's there no matter what. So how many other towns besides Newfane have Australian ballots?
Nobody.
Nobody.
Newfane.
That's the problem. We're the unique ones. We have it every year, the Australian ballot. So for them to set up for Australian ballot on town meeting day is more money for each town. They have to put, you have to pay the. There's a lot
I
of stuff.
mean, we are paying that now.
Yeah.
And that's a fine investment for.
No,
people
I'm
that are
not saying,
working
but I'm
really
just saying
hard.
that's one of the reasons they don't do it now, I think.
Just for the veracity, it's just a big ask. I just think you should consider that. You should really talk to your town clerks, or if you would make some sort of decision.
So for clarification, only 2 votes were taken, and how late were you here till? Or there till?
9.
2 hours.
9 at night?
9:15.
Yeah, it's about 2 hours to count it, tally it, and announce the.
Oh, my.
I'd say it is an unbelievably precise, it's exactly what we expect our town clerks to run. It was really cool to watch, I have to admit. It's exactly what democracy is about, and making sure that we're extremely particular. It's just, I think you would want to have more information before making that type of decision.
A related thing, and maybe we need to discuss this later, with voting. You're talking about the budget here, but I'm talking about voting for the people at large. That was a problem this year in Wyndham because nobody knew who these people were.
That's not germane to the whole correspondence
I understand
piece.
that,
So let's
but-
put that on for later.
Yeah, that maybe can be later, but it's related to what happens on the voting on town
Right, so
meeting day.
that comes under when we're actually going to vote and how.
Yeah.
Move on. Emily, did you have a comment before I let Rick speak?
Yeah, Joe, you'll remember, and anyone else on the Leland and Gray Board will remember that we've had conversations off and on over the years, especially after a snowstorm during a budget vote, that we would consider at some point moving it to fairer weather conditions. So while I respect the thought around, I know why we're being asked to do it for town meeting day, and that makes sense, but I also, the last thing I want to do is burden our town clerks or our town offices at all. That is not a good way for us to start our new board and our new school district. But I would ask that when we do finally make this decision, we don't think about limiting it only to 2 weeks after town meeting. We might want to think about whether even April, and there are implications around that, how long we wait. The vote needs to happen before June 30th. So you have to allow yourself enough time for revotes and reconsiderations of votes. But I just want to think about if we're going to do it, and your recommendation, did you say, was not prior to town meeting?
Yeah, the only reason we do a joint prior to town meeting is we need to have that budget locked down for the individual towns following the February vote getting to town meeting. We don't have that structure here. We have a couple considerations that I would like the board to consider, like we have contractual obligations to give contracts on a certain date currently, that could be collectively bargained to be changed. So that would be something that we'd want to know what budget we have to be able to provide contracts to your employees.
Right. So we may have to think about that as
Yeah.
well. But I would just say we should be thinking about it from that perspective before we make, we don't need to make the decision immediately.
No.
I think we need to be thinking about all of those implications.
No, that's why I
Because this is
very
really
much
important.
appreciate
Yeah,
having it brought
no,
up right
this is the
now.
time we should
This is
discuss.
the time to discuss it, exactly.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I have a question.
We're probably going to end up talking about, Drew, I gotcha. We're going to end up talking about when the annual meeting is going to be going forward at the next annual meeting, because we'll have to set a date for our future annual meeting. So we'll have this conversation before April 3rd when we have our annual meeting. And at our annual meeting, we'll have presumably a large group of people there who can weigh in on that. True?
We're going to have this discussion then. I'll wait, and we'll have it done.
Okay. Rick, you've been waiting. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, Bill presented a plan for all the votes to you guys last summer, and it kind of surprises me how few people weren't listening, because he laid it all out. And I won't rehash the fact that you're going to have a complete rebellion on your hands if you make the town clerks do this again. But I will use the last election to come up with a couple of examples. This whole, we're going to have more turnout if people vote at town meeting, that's a false assumption. We just had an election that involved 5 towns. It was held on town meeting day. We counted 426 ballots. That's pretty much equal to what Leland Gray is, right?
Yeah,
With
that's
an
a-
Australian ballot, you can vote any time for 30 days up to the election date. All you have to do is call your town clerk, say, please send me an absentee ballot. If you can't do that, if you won't do that, then you don't want to vote. So, I mean, it's so easy to vote. Just because town meeting's being held doesn't mean that people are going to vote, because if they can't drag themselves out of bed to vote, They sure aren't gonna bother at town meeting. And I can guarantee you, we took in less ballots at our town meeting than we had people sitting in the audience. The other false assumption on my part, prior to this one, and it brings up some of the, or I have already expressed my concerns at town meeting. Newfane holds an Australian ballot, yes, except because these have to be commingled, Newfane has to keep all these ballots separate. Newfane had to walk in with a ballot box. Newfane did not have enough people to send us the required individuals to carry that ballot box. We were supposed to have, by law, either the town clerk and a JP or 2 JPs. We did not, because everybody was busy counting ballots in Newfane. So I didn't expect Newfane to have a problem. Well, guess what? Newfane had a problem with it too. So my feelings on town meeting is, forget it. It's not gonna make a difference. And how on earth are you gonna have a public information session? Because I can guarantee you Townsend's not gonna let you sit at town meeting and talk about your budget. You are a separate entity now, completely separate. So there's gonna be no budget discussion at town meeting. You know, town meeting now is going to be just town meeting. Okay, we clear on that? Now, briefly on this budgetary figures. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I understand it's confusing, but we're being taxed on the per pupil, basically. Add to that, you can take a situation and you can try to sugarcoat it and say, well, the budget's not going up, it's not going up, it's not going up. All the while, your student population is diminishing, and you could end up like Rochester with 3 students in the high school. And all anybody's looking at is this budget figure. You know, we're not spending any more money, but, you know, you got dark hallways and a couple of kids wandering around. So, you know, I don't care whether you add it or not, but your taxes are based on that per student figure. Okay, so that's my extent right now.
Thank you. Okay, so I think any more discussion on that? I think we can take that all into consideration when we talk about setting our annual meeting date going forward. Thanks.
Thank you for considering it. And that's all this was about, is now is the time to bring this up to discuss it. And I guess I wasn't aware that the other towns did not do it also by Australian ballot. They all are floor votes, correct?
Right. This year, they all had to do the at-large one, and it's like, I think the first time they all had to do it on town meeting day, it got very confusing too.
Well, last year when we were all elected,
Right.
the town had to have,
Well, second, yeah.
anything done for the West River Education District had to be by Australian ballot. And it's been the last 2 town meeting days when this has been done. And I know, you know, like
Well,
Rick
if this-
said, that
if this doesn't
it's
get-
inconvenient for town clerks.
If this doesn't get changed, it's going to be done every other year because the 2 positions at large are every other year.
Right, it'll be something every year, and so we're proud, you know, we will, you know, taking into account everything that we know, the meeting will probably end up moving off at town meeting day, would be my guess. But, you know, we'll have that discussion down the road. Moving on to solidifying our vision. Where we left it last time was a bunch of sentences that we agreed, we really liked what it said, it had our ideas captured, we had a lot of discussion and back and forth about where we were going to go, and we were trying to wordsmith it into something coherent. There's the, you know, I talked to Jen about it a little bit, but most of this work is hers, and I played with it, and I couldn't improve on it. But the vision statement that was part of the agenda, that was the link that I think you all have, that begins with, in the West River Modified Education District, all students will have an outstanding educational experience, is sort of what I would call our working draft of what we have going right now. Sticking to the parameters that we're not necessarily adding anything or reopening the discussion of like what is the vision, just how do we say what we meant to say. do we need to edit this any further? And I think that the revisions come out much stronger. It's not passive voice, it's very active. It gives assurances. I mean, what? Edits?
He just said one too many sentences.
One too many sentences.
I think it's too wordy. And if a small group of people, 1 or 2, or maybe 3 at the most, people worked on that, maybe it could get down to a more nice, tight, concise statement. When we began doing this, and I looked around at other people's statements, most of the really good ones were nice and tight and concise. It's just my opinion that this is too wordy.
You don't have any suggested edits then either.
Well, I don't think...
That's a yes or no question.
Well, Joe, we're not here at this meeting to wordsmith this, are we?
Yes.
You want us to wordsmith this tonight?
I would like to come out of this meeting in the next 20 minutes to a half an hour with, okay, this is the vision, and start putting some goals together. Because if we don't stay on that schedule, we need to, by May-ish, we need to have the vision and the goals in a place where we say, okay, administration, show us what the district looks like that, or we're not going to have a plan in place when we take over.
May I make a suggestion?
Certainly.
That we adopt this one, and further down the line, if we can come up with more concise, once we see how the district is developing and where we need to pay more attention, that we can always revisit it and restructure it.
Okay. Well, I can.
So, am I making a motion, or am I
I don't
just
know.
discussing?
Are we
I can make a
discussing?
motion to adopt this, but that's my reason.
Yeah, you
why.
could do that. You could certainly make a motion to adopt this. And we could always make a motion to amend the vision statement or revise the vision statement down the way.
Do we have any other opinions?
Yeah, do we have any other, yes, Alicia?
As much as I generally completely support a lot of the things Ken says, I think that we need to put our best step, our first step, our best step. I think that putting out something that we did not feel was our best and voting on it and then trying to run with it would just send a message that is muddy water and we're not sure which direction we're going, and to revisit it probably won't happen because we're very, very busy. I would like to see us, even if it takes a little bit, I know we don't have much time, but I'd like to see the wordsmithing and one good final thing voted on.
Do you have some edits that you would suggest then? I mean, two people now have kind of said, well, I'd like to wordsmith it a little bit, but do we have any of those edits here? I mean, this has been worked, by a couple
do.
different people. Okay, that's what I'd like to get to.
But unfortunately, I didn't shorten it. No, it's marginally shorter, but, yeah, no, it's not.
What is that?
All right, so WRED will ensure outstanding equitable educational opportunities in a safe and welcoming learning environment to create informed, empowered, and engaged global citizens. Here's a second sentence that I didn't want, but all the while balancing fiduciary responsibility to our community with the provision of resources, staffing, and systems aimed at meeting our goals.
One more time.
WRED will ensure outstanding equitable educational opportunities in a safe and welcoming learning environment to create informed, empowered, and engaged global citizens, all the while balancing fiduciary responsibility to our community with the provision of resources, staffing, and systems aimed at meeting our goals.
It is marginally shorter.
Like 3 words.
Yeah, pretty much. Well,
Maybe.
you got a little shorter. And I think it says, all of these say essentially the same thing. If you like, if the board likes that better, I could support that one. And I don't think that, it's I don't feel like it's settling either. I mean, we spent a long time and a lot of work getting to the things that we wanted to say. Finding a way to say them really concisely is, is hard, but we're saying it, Yes, go ahead.
Do any of the new members, any of our new people have anything?
I just had one question. At the last meeting, we were talking about like the misdiscussion involving the families part of it, and that's what's not still represented in either one of these. I like them both.
I think the answer to that was that rather than single families out, that they were a part of the community, and rather than name all the components of the community, families are just a part of that.
If, I can give an example of that. If the principal sends home in every kid's backpack a notice, not everybody has a kid in the school that's in the town. So how do they get to know? That's why you can't separate them, they're all citizens.
Fair enough.
True?
You look like you have something to say.
I do think that the community feedback that I got we do need to really tie into or show support for the families. And I know we talked about maybe putting it in the goals, but I do want to voice that I agree that we really need to show and speak that we are supporting the families within the school systems. I also understand that not everybody has a kid in the school, but some of the parents feel like they really need to be included more.
I think that if there is some feeling of not being included, that's a perfect place for a goal rather than we should be including all our community. And if some of our community is feeling excluded, then perhaps we need to set some goals about including them.
I have an example.
Of someone else's vision statement?
The reworked.
Oh, okay. I understand.
The school district, in cooperation with the community, is committed to providing the experiences and opportunities necessary to maximize the academic and social growth of all students. Much shorter, much more concise.
One more time, please.
Pardon me?
Say it once more time.
One more time? Okay. The district, in cooperation with the community, is committed to providing the experiences and opportunities necessary to maximize the academic and social growth of all students. Does that include what we said?
I'd have to see it written down, I think, to be sure that it covered everything.
I'm sorry, can you do it one more time? I feel like I'm pretty on board with this. But
One more time?
Yeah.
All right.
Sounds more like
The
a mission.
school district, in cooperation with the community, is committed to providing the experiences and opportunities necessary to maximize the academic and social growth of all students.
You want to write it down?
Write it?
Yeah, sure.
Write it.
Do you think that does
Bill's
it?
gathering.
Any opinions on that one?
Okay.
I'm sorry? Bill?
I would just say to remember that when Jen walked you through all this, that when you have a vision, you're there. It's what you see. It's not what you plan to do. It's not what you hope to do. You've arrived. So just make sure that it is active, it is reality, you have already achieved this. So it's not you're hoping to do it, it's not you're planning to do it, you're there.
This says
So I would
it's
just
committed.
make sure that language matches.
So something stronger than committed is what you're suggesting?
Well, committed, that would probably be more of, that's your mission, is you're committed to doing it.
Yeah.
It's already existing is your vision. So just think about the simplicity of a vision is you see it. You see the school system. What do you see? Do you see a financially responsible school system that delivers X?
Establishes?
It is.
Establishes?
Well, it's got to, it's established. Right.
Yes.
Oops.
You have an established.
Is that a proper place for
Oh, it's
past
fine.
participle? Who's
I'm
the
just-
grammar people in the room?
Just grammar-wise, just make sure it's there.
That's like,
When you read it, you see it.
I'll just remind you that goals and beyond is not in there, just for the record.
to
Doesn't have
maximize
to be.
academic. I saw her touch on it.
Right. The active.
Oops.
Teacher, give me that teacher's quick.
So while they're typing that, thoughts?
Sorry.
That one doesn't seem to me to be as strong, like, it doesn't give me the, I can see this. It does sound more like, this is what we think we're gonna try to do, than this is how things are.
Hey, Bill, would we have the ability to print this off, or?
If you email it to me, I can go print it.
Yeah, hit the share button at the top there. And hit KJ, and Chris Jers will pop up.
See how it popped up?
Hey, they should. Well,
No, literally.
Oh, yeah, she did pop up, didn't she?
I kind of like the first two, either the one from last week or the one that Al.
You have a question, comment?
I like how you made this word concise. I still like the last piece of this original one, where you read your last few words.
It's in these last words.
Just the last words and of what you just rewrote.
Committed to providing the experiences and opportunities necessary to maximize the academic and social growth of all students.
To become informed, empowered, and
Okay.
engaged global citizens.
Okay.
I do like that last piece.
All
Really says exactly, beyond just the social, it's very clear what we want our students to do.
Tell me again, to become.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Tell Chris I'll resend it.
Well, once you've shared it with her, she owns
You can
it.
see that happening.
Oh, true.
Yeah, you can probably see her at the top in it, because it's a Google.
There we go. Oops, I don't have become spelled right. See, I missed the C.
Just a quick aside,
There we go.
as we sort out the main visions, back to the family thing, maybe we can take something from River Valleys, because what they did is they said the climate and culture that's appreciated by parents and communities. So that kind of gets them both all in without adding a whole lot more words. Just to throw that out there. What the River Valley said is, they said, and a climate and culture that is appreciated by parents and community. So it ties in the families with the broader community without adding a whole lot more words.
I didn't hear everything you said, sorry.
Okay.
But you're talking about families.
Yeah, it was talking about the families and what River Valleys, their vision statement, they said that they'll create a climate and culture that's appreciated by parents and community. So it ties the parents in with the larger community, which I think was what we were talking about.
So you're suggesting to steal their whole sentence?
No, I'm just saying, I was suggesting in whatever we do, that maybe we consider doing parents and community to sew up that families thing that we were talking about.
So not climate and culture, just somehow stick in.
Right, just parents and community.
But where?
Well, I guess it depends on which one we're going with, but
In cooperation with
with.
parents and
and
community?
Yeah.
School district in cooperation with parents and community is
Oops.
committed to provide. we went through is committed to providing before, in the last meeting, talking about how that wasn't strong enough, and we went back and strengthened things. And like, our first draft was will ensure, and, you know, and now we're like, is committed to. It's, I think that's weakened it.
Well, we
I
can
think-
still use the in, you know, in, and take out,
You know, and then this, the redraft, you know, it's all students will have, you know, is responsible to the needs of the community. Those are really strongly worded sentences.
But if you get rid of is committed to, and put in will ensure.
I'm just keeping you on task. I only have to drive 2.5 hours.
Joe,
Yes.
what's wrong with the draft that we have? What's missing?
Which one?
The one that came up from last meeting. If you put your head inside of the school, it's created in the draft that we handed out. What's wrong with it? What's missing?
Nothing. Well, I actually think that this one that got wordsmithed out of the last one was pretty complete. And I figure some minor tweaks to see if we addressed something. You know, and I mean, talking about River Valley's vision statement, theirs is quite a bit longer than ours is. They put a lot down, like paragraphs even. So, you know.
A little word count.
Yeah.
Does anybody disagree with the vision? Because I don't think we should judge our vision of the school on the number of words.
I agree.
So if this is our vision, we should just keep the vision regardless of the number of words that are in our vision. So rather than screwing up our vision to take out 3 words, let's just vote on our vision.
Is there a motion in there somewhere, Drew? No, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Didn't I already do that at the beginning, the move to use the one that we have now?
You haven't done that yet, but you could.
I thought I did.
there's not a motion on the floor yet.
Yeah, you talked about doing it with the revisions, and there was some discussion of the, you know, we should, if we're gonna adopt this vision, if this is our vision, then this is our vision, and we're not gonna fiddle with it later. This is what we see as important, and when we set the goals, we then look at this and say, does this support the vision we adopted? Because that guides goal setting. Does it do that? So, yeah, you know, if you want to make a motion that one of these become our vision, you know, go ahead.
I will make that motion. The original one that we got handed out from last meeting.
And I will second that.
All right. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the vision statement that was attached to the agenda that reads, in West River Modified Education District, all students will have an outstanding educational experience in a safe and welcoming environment so that they may achieve and surpass their learning goals. The West River Modified Education District is responsible to the needs of its community and provides the necessary systems, staffing, and resources needed to ensure that all of our students will become informed, empowered, and engaged global citizens. That's the motion. We have been fiddling around with this. We can certainly continue to discuss this, but that's the motion on the floor. Discussion, comments, questions?
Can I make a motion to amend it? To just say the needs of its parents and community?
You can make the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so now we're discussing just the amendment to add, where is it?
Fourth line.
Responsible to the needs of its parents and community. So we're adding after its parents and.
Or parents, comma, community, comma, and provides, might be another way of doing that.
Can't do that.
No.
The first way is fine.
The first one is correct grammatically. Okay, discussion on that?
My not going to quabble over one word.
Personally, I'm not going to quabble over it much, although I do like the idea of not necessarily singling out any group of the community. And parents, if you're not a parent but your family, are you still getting addressed? And it just brings up, it muddies it. But
I agree. I also feel like as a parent, I'm recognized in this by being part of the community. I acknowledge that I am part of the community as a parent. I don't feel the need to have both pointed out.
Yeah, I agree that it's probably going to muddy things up to add a subgroup.
Since we've had both sides of it, call the question.
all right, it's been called. Yep. So all in favor of adding parents and community, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay?
Nay.
Nay. Okay. I think the nays appear to have it. So that motion fails. Now we're back to discussing the original motion to adopt that as our vision statement. Any further discussion on that?
We removed one comma. Grammatically, it should say informed, comma, empowered, no comma, and engaged global citizens.
What is that?
Yeah, subject to grammar, sure.
Thank you.
Anything else, folks? All right, all in favor of adopting that as our vision, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay?
Okay. Abstentions? All right, the motion carries. We have a vision. Okay, so the next thing is to start setting goals. I know attached to the agenda as a link was the SMART goal thing, sort of, what do you call it? It's not a questionnaire, it's sort of a method of creating goals. And the SMART is an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, results-focused, and time-bound. So, keeping those things in mind as you set goals, and there are some examples there, we need to be specific about what's going to be accomplished and how it's measurable and, how it's possible. And then we set a time for it so that we can actually, as a board, then charge our administration to meet these goals and see if those goals are being met so that we can, make sure that the work we'd like to see done is being done. So, are there goals, looking at goals that, or areas that we would want to write goals on? Obviously family, including family in this is an important piece. How do we write the goal? What is the specific goal in terms of addressing the need to include, community members? Oh my goodness. How many pages is this? Two pages. There you go. Okay, so these are some sample goals. This is Springfield north of us?
Correct.
Goal 6 deals with families, strengthen school and community connections. A little bit broad, but then you start talking about, well, how do you do that? How do you measure that? What's the measure of the strengthened thing? How do you achieve it? Is that press releases? Is that, taping meetings and broadcasting them? I mean, how do you actually achieve that goal? So I would entertain suggestions for, goals that we want to set, folks.
Good. I do like Springfield's first goal.
Okay.
100% of students will graduate from high school.
Okay. Well, that's certainly specific.
And measurable.
And measurable, yes. Is it achievable?
Absolutely.
Yes?
Yeah, I think so. Certainly results focused. And if we were to use that as a goal, I mean, obviously it's not going to happen. You know, how long is it going to take? You know, our graduation rate now is somewhere in the high 80s, low 90s, Bill?
86.4.
Okay. I was guessing 87.
All right, well, we need to improve on that.
You know, yeah, okay, so how long do we say, time-bound wise? You know, 100% of students will graduate from high school by,
2025, make it happen, Joe.
I'm gonna put you in charge of that committee. Okay, so in all seriousness, is that a goal that we want to actually adopt? All students, 100% of high school students will graduate.
Does a GED count?
I don't think that counts as graduating, but, Bill, does a GED count as graduating?
It is a graduation equivalent degree.
But it means you've
I would
left
have to
high
look up
school
the
and not
statistics
finished.
of how we would,
Yeah,
how we are rated on
It
statistics.
would be a little hard to measure that.
I will tell you that the state new accountability system does give us a 4-year cohort and a 6-year cohort measure of all students entering 9th grade. So that data will be readily available to this board.
Okay.
Is this a little like No Child Left Behind?
right.
Every single last student has to achieve it?
Not possible.
Well, it's a goal. It's not a absolute.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, how can you set a goal any lower?
I mean, yeah, that's what I was gonna get at. I mean, we have to set a goal of 100% of our students, just like, I mean, I set a goal of 100% of my patients surviving.
Thank you for that, thank you.
Would you like it if I said, you know, we're only shooting for 86 this time? So 100% is what we gotta shoot for.
Yeah. If you're gonna set it lower, I don't want to ride. Okay, so there's a goal. You know,
Would you do it in increments? By saying, you know, some of the year increments that Bill talked about, you know, by a certain date, 95% of them will graduate, by this, keep moving it up?
And then if you hit 96, you don't have a goal anymore.
So what I would suggest is that you keep it very simple, but the board requires the reporting back and the reflection on. I
How
think
will
in
we
one of
do
those
that?
examples, you can see that there's a goal and then there's some very specific things below that. So for example, all these goals, I'm going to be accountable, my team and I, to report back to you progress towards those goals, given the resources that you allocate based on asking your communities for that, right? So I can absolutely see that I report back that we have 89% of students graduating, and you guys ask for, we want some more detailed data on that. Is our trend hitting the right way? Doesn't mean we change the goal, just means you guys want detailed data on progress towards that goal. So I would keep the goal clear, concise, simple, and then I would require your employees to report back to you in the form that you want that information. Long story short, keep the goal.
keep the goal, don't
Okay,
necessarily
need a motion
hit
on that?
incremental timelines.
I would go for.
Okay, I would make
motions,
a
yes. Lock
motion
these
that our
down.
first goal be that 100% of our students will obtain a high school graduation, or will graduate from high school.
All right, 100% of students will graduate from high school. Second?
I'll second.
Who seconded?
Christina Robinson. I think, am I allowed?
I don't think so.
I don't think
I'll
so.
second it.
You totally can participate, but you can't
I got
Yeah.
you covered.
do that.
Thank you, Drew. All right.
Just let me know what you need.
I like the energy.
Any further discussion on that motion, now that it's been made? Okay, seeing none. All in favor of adopting our first goal as 100% of students will graduate from high school, please say aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, we've got one. I'm looking at these things, I don't think goal number 5 of Springfield's is bad either, to provide structures and systems to support educators and school leaders to perform their best work.
How do you measure that?
Well, we talk about providing systems. I think we'd have to talk about how we measure that, and I'm not sure right off the top of how we measure that we're providing that.
That's easy. If they don't meet goal number 1, then they're not completing goal number 5. Right?
Well, we would need to look at, is everybody getting the professional development they need? Are they getting the training they need? Are they getting the resources that they need to do the things that there is? Is there adequate communication going on? It has to do with more, systems and structure and things like that. Is there a goal in there that's measurable, Bill? Or
Well, I mean, Nancy's
are we
right.
reaching?
I mean, we gotta, what are you going to measure that,
Student achievement.
Well, I mean, in your vision, you guys have necessary systems, staffing, and resources, right?
Right.
So it logically would follow that that would be a goal. The reason we have the SMART template is so that you ask the follow-up question that Nancy's
So how
asking,
do we
which
measure
is,
it?
great that that's a goal, how would we measure that? So
Student
you can
achievement.
either spend time right now thinking of possibilities of how to measure it, or you can say this is a goal that's really important to us, and you're going to task your employee to come back with some suggestions about how to measure it.
That sounds like a cop-out, but I like it.
Well, but if you really believe in that, right?
Okay.
I don't want to lose that energy by trying to get to the details of the measurement when you have people that work for you that can do that work and at least reflect it back. So my suggestion would be not to make a motion about that goal, but to lock down an agreement that that is a goal that you'd like to hear how it could be measured.
Okay. Thoughts, folks? And we can do that with more, with more than just that one, too.
Exactly.
I mean, if there are things that we feel strongly about, if we can get 5, 6, sort of high-level goals that we want to put down, we can talk about, is this quantifiable? I mean, we don't have to come up with how it's measured tonight. And the answer may be after, Bill meets with his team, that, yeah, there's really no way to measure that one. We can't come up with anything. And then, maybe it's not a goal anymore because it's not so smart. But if we like the idea, like Bill says, I think we can certainly say, can this be measured? Can you figure out a way to make this measurable?
Okay, I just put it
Okay,
down.
so why don't we just come up with goals
That tie to our vision.
that tie, right?
That tie to what?
The vision. I mean, everything should. go
Okay,
back.
well, exactly. Everything should go back to revision.
So let's start with sentence by sentence.
Okay.
Good goal. Safe and welcoming, I mean, I agree with 5, goal 5, and Bill can probably come back with measurables on that.
Provides goal 5?
Yeah.
Okay, so Springfield's goal 5, Bill, is essentially, tell us how we can measure it.
Got it.
So
Okay.
safe and
Safe and welcoming
environment is kind of a key phrase.
Yeah.
I would set a goal around that.
Actually, I believe all the schools are working right now with the state police, little by little, to try to improve their security on the campus as far as that goes. I know we recently had somebody out there.
Well, and can the goal be just, can the goal be just as simple as, providing a safe and welcoming environment? I mean, it's quantifiable a little bit with like school climate.
Right.
Things like that.
Security.
Security. I think there would be a general sense in the building from.
That the bullying policies are being followed.
Yeah, kids are safe there.
And that's,
They feel
they seem
safe.
measurable, so yeah, why don't
Yeah.
you just throw that in just like
I
that?
know of one school who gave the kids questionnaires, and kind of a detailed one, a really good questionnaire about how safe they felt at school. On the playground, in the classroom, in the hallways, before school, blah, blah, blah. But they gave one to the kids and asked the kids how safe they felt.
Yeah, I think Leland and Gray does that every year.
Do they?
Yeah, they have a school, we have a school climate
School
survey
climate
every
survey
year.
We do for our continuous improvement plans.
Yeah.
All right, so can you tell me what it is that you want, what is the goal that you want to try to have?
Providing a safe, secure, and welcoming environment.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay. Achieve and surpass their learning goals. I think that's a little bit covered by 100% of the students will graduate. And it's also covered a little bit by, the providing the structures and systems. Is there anything else we need to do to address that little piece?
Which one are you looking at?
Achieve and surpass learning goals?
I feel like the graduation thing, yes, that applies to the high school students, but there's a whole lot of time that you should be doing this before you turn into a senior. So how do you measure it before you're a senior?
Mm-hmm. That's where we go back to Bill, because we do have to think about that we're creating this district from pre-K to 12. So you make a great point. How's this measured, in secondary?
Mike, do you have River Valley said something in their vision about that kind of quantified something that wasn't particular to high school because they only go through 6th grade? Was there something in there?
They provided high-quality instruction and engaged learning, which results in all students demonstrating academic proficiency.
Is that too nebulous for you?
Yeah. I don't like academic proficiency because I just feel like whether a child is here or here, that everybody should be moving up. And so it's less about, okay, is everybody proficient here? I want to see everybody boost. Does that make sense? And I don't know how you phrase that in a goal or how you measure that.
So
I'm not
more
very
about the
helpful.
individual, more about the individual?
Yeah, more about the individual, like no matter where you're starting, that everybody's growing, regardless of where you sit on the spectrum, everybody's growing.
So does that fit into your vision at the end of line 2? Achieve and surpass learning goals?
That I get, because every kid's going to achieve and surpass individually.
And the key word being their learning goals.
Right.
Exactly.
I know at Newbrook, we had this discussion a while ago about that and how it's measurable. And the test results that we get are not accurate for the fact of you may have 5 kids in a class and next year there's 5 completely different kids in the next grade, so you're not, it could jump, it could go down, it could stay level. So the only way we could probably ensure that is to make sure that each student has it's tracked from grade 1 to where they're progressing to grade 2 to grade 3, grade 4, grade 5, and I'm a big advocate for that actually, so. Do we get each student an individual learning plan from grade 1 on or pre-K on? Isn't that goal 4? I didn't see goal 4.
Very similar to goal 4.
Yeah, Springfield has a goal for that every student is supported developing a
By
personalized
middle
learning plan starting in middle school.
Lindsay, can you see what I
But how are you going to measure
You know what, I actually don't have it at this second. Do you have
before
it?
that?
Well, you know what's What's interesting? Yeah, I think the lower grades don't take the Ames web. so
Wait.
I mean-
Can't hear you down here.
Yes.
Yes.
I was just responding to what Ken said, because I think that not all grades take the Ames web, but I'm sure there's something else, so I don't know what level of minutia we want to get into, but I just want to make sure there is in fact something else, some sort of testing that we can point to for the lower.
We definitely stay out of the minutia. how it's done is, how the cake gets baked, we just want the results.
True, but they say starting in middle school, that's pretty specific, so what we're just asking is, can that be earlier? in the
Well,
process?
is there such a thing as a personalized learning plan down into the early grades, Bill?
There's not a statutory requirement for that. But
We're beyond that. We can go beyond statutory requirements.
Yeah, but I mean, is it even practical?
there are, as Mike said, there are many different entry points of assessments to quantify student achievement and growth. I think that's another thing that you guys are really talking about here is both achievement and growth and proficiency. And what I wrote down is that all students achieve and surpass their learning goals, emphasis on each student. And that at least challenges my team to come up with a reflection back to you of how we would go about trying to make that measurable. And then we can have that discussion. I mean, this is good work for me to reflect back to you guys.
Okay.
We opened up the discussion. Works for
Okay.
me.
All right. So the next sentence talks about how we're responsive to the needs of our community. So, and I know that's an important piece. And it may actually be the last one that we haven't already covered in this because of how we went at this. So what's the goal around the community? Now, how do we phrase that?
Well, I don't know, I mean, you can look at that in many different aspects, because you can look at that as, are we providing a free or reduced lunch to whoever is being needed to in one community and not another? Are we, are we putting enough, like, I feel by having all our meetings in Townsend, that it's not really easier, for other Jamaica to come down here, or Brookline.
No, right.
So,
Okay, so one of the, if we have a broad community goal where we talk about, engaging our communities to,
Accessibility.
Then we start talking about the subpoints under there is like, we move our board meetings so that how the things run are approachable. And the free and reduced lunch, I almost look at as the supporting students in a systematic way. Making sure they're fed and that's part of a safe, welcoming, just having what you need to learn environment kind of thing. I just want to make sure we capture, I don't know how exactly to do it. How do we capture the broad, we will stay engaged with our community and keep them informed and address their issues and that. Emily first, then Alicia. It's so hard to do this when I can't see you all.
Next time, we're gonna be crooking our table.
We are
We're gonna be
not
like
meeting in this room again
Well,
if we can help it.
Too straight, I can't see any of
Yeah,
you
you
folks
just-
down there, but there you are.
Sit over here.
My thought around this is more a higher level, and what I want to be able to do is, we struggle getting engagement from community members at every meeting.
A little bit
It's not
louder,
just
please,
ours.
Emily.
It's not just ours, it's every board, I think, that exists out there has a hard time bringing community members in and having them engage in not just our meetings, but in our school systems. And so I think we need to we need to actively create the environment that actually does encourage and even provide opportunities for our community members and our communities at large to come and participate, both at the board level and where appropriate at the school level. So that could be just finding a way to get them to come to games, or encouraging our schools to provide community evenings, whatever. I've just thrown stuff out, but what I really want to make sure we do is create. I'm waving my arms, but it's not
I'm waving
working.
my arms.
Wow. Anyway, I'm trying to create the environment that will,
Thank you all.
Alicia, go stand about
So any thoughts on how you put that into a goal?
I thought I had some pretty good words there.
I think I completely agree with Emily on that. I think we could be a leader. I mean, this is the opportunity to step out and lead in those. I think it might be easier if you take this sentence, if I make a suggestion, and responsible to the needs of the community is there's a lot of community needs. If we broke it into 3 sections and made 3 short goals and instead of trying to make it one long wordy goal, one that would be communication and community involvement in the school system, or involved in what Emily said so eloquently that I'm not going to say well. 2 would be fiscally responsible, and 3 would be for the parent and families component. And just 3 very simple things. And if you don't want to have me raise my hand again, I'll give my family's one, throw that out there, since Emily already handled a lot of eloquent community communication.
No, I think what, you know, what you're saying is absolutely right. If we need is like a broad community involvement goal, and then like what you said, the 3 it's like those are pieces under the one goal. In order to engage the community on a broad level, we're going to encourage attendance at games. We're going to do some things with the families. We're going to, you know, all of those are pieces underneath that goal.
That's not the goal.
And it doesn't have to be listed necessarily in the long wordy goal. The goal can be a simple 1-sentence, you know, that we can try and encompass all of that, and you know, it's like we will do this by being, you know, fiscally responsible and, you know, addressing these needs and whatever.
Joe?
Yes, Ken?
How about we throw a goal as simple as this, just saying, to actively seek public input and involvement?
Just a reminder from previous conversations, maybe this is an opportunity for you guys to make this a goal, but you all had discussions during the study committee process and the beginning of this board that you are going to create school advisory committees and the makeup of that group and the charge to that group. And maybe that is the vehicle for all of these things that you guys are talking about to happen. And so maybe the goal is simply to make those happen.
Specific and measurable.
I'm like, okay, so thank you, Bill. I think you've got it. I'm looking for confirmation.
Yeah, go with that.
Sure.
So the goal is
The goal is to-
organize school advisory committees.
Yep.
That, and then this is where I go to what you guys all just said. Who's on that committee? Right? Parents,
Yep.
community members,
Students.
and your administrator at each building.
No student? We want students. Yeah?
It's up to you guys.
It's their school.
Students in all the schools?
Sure.
Elementary
level
student.
also?
You know, we gonna get a second grader at a 7 o'clock meeting?
Not mine.
Mine comes.
Now remember, school advisory doesn't have to be at 7.
That's right, the school advisory
It
doesn't
could be
have to
right
be.
after school, it could be at
It's-
lunchtime.
It's hearing from the parents of
True enough.
that world. It's hearing from
Okay,
the
students.
teachers.
I like it.
It's hearing from the community members.
Okay,
So-
make it happen, move on.
Organize school advisory committees, the makeup of them is parents, community members, building administrator, and students.
Okay, we're not going to organize them.
No, we-
Are you going to make them happen? Are you going to create them?
Create them.
Are you
Okay.
going to have teacher?
Yes.
Yes.
I want to put this on.
I'm sure it's in there.
Well, it wasn't. in
I
his
know,
list.
I know, I was being a little. It has to be there, obviously.
No, but they're
Okay,
teachers.
going down the vision statement, necessary systems, staffing, and resources, I think we already covered that. Informed, empowered, engaged global citizens, again.
Actually, I have a question. Is that all right?
Sure.
About that systems and staffing resources. This goal is really that talks more about providing the systems and structures to support the educators, which obviously are supporting the students, but I think that it may be, so that school lunch thing maybe doesn't fit into that, just because this is really, that goal really says to support the educators and leaders to perform their best work. It doesn't really talk about specifically supporting the student,
Okay.
which school lunch isn't really, doesn't come through an educator to the students.
So we have another goal that says we'll develop the operational and educational systems to support the students.
Yeah.
Or do we just broaden the other goal and add students in it? Actually, no.
Well, do we
Separate
want,
goal.
do we
That's a
want,
separate goal.
do we want to put in there up-to-date technology?
Yes.
Which I know will probably be a financial burden, but you know what? If you don't have it, you can't teach it. Just saying.
So we'll have the systems. Education.
Well, it's part of that, it's everything.
So something about we'll have the educational and operational systems and technology to support students?
What was that?
We'll have the educational and operational systems and technology to support students?
Students,
I'm sorry?
student success?
Student success.
Sure. Student learning, student success,
Remember, we're
Yeah.
going to have Bill run all these by his staff to see if they're measurable, to show if we can actually do them, so. Let's just get the ideas out there now and
Yep.
keep this thing rolling, people.
Well, okay, so now we've got systems, staffing, and resources for both educators and students. And then the last one, informed, empowered, and engaged global citizens, you know, making the progress that they're making, graduating from high school. You know, do we need to get another goal around that, or have we kind of covered it?
How can you measure that they will become informed, empowered, and engaged citizens?
It's
We don't see them in the police
subjective as
roundup.
all heck.
Field trips.
It's very subjective, so I don't know if you can measure it.
We go to Canada.
You know, so maybe we can't.
I feel like if it's worthy enough to be in our vision, that we ought to have a goal about it.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of it under, you know, I mean, sure, you're an engaged, empowered global citizen if you graduate from high school.
But it's more, so being a good citizen is more than just graduating, as we see with our polls.
Well, if you participate in the process and you've had a personal learning plan and you're, you know, being given those supports, you've sort of been led to that.
If we go back to the statement itself, we could say that we will provide the necessary system, staffing, and resources, needed to ensure that all of our students will have the tools to become informed, empowered, and engaged global citizens. That you can do. You can give them the tools. You can't ensure that they actually, as adults, will do that.
But the vision is that we make them that, not that we just give them the tools. I mean, we might not get that, but, you know, can we measure the tools?
Sure.
So that's the goal. The goal is to provide the tools, and then we can measure that we gave them the tools.
Right.
So what are the tools to becoming an informed, empowered, engaged global citizen?
Critical thinking. Expression.
Community service.
Pardon me?
Community service.
Community service.
Yeah, community service should be a voluntary thing, not a mandatory thing.
You're right, we shouldn't have to tell.
Well, you think about
You're right
it.
that.
Our courts turn around, and instead of a fine, they'll give somebody community service, and we force our high school kids to do community service before they even did anything wrong, so, it's like, it's, you gotta wanna do it. I know kids that do it before they even go to high school because they enjoy it. It's not everybody's cup of tea, and it shouldn't be a requirement. That's my own personal opinion, and it's backed by many others, so.
Okay, so the tools so we're going to provide the tools to create informed, empowered global citizens, and then defining the tools, it's critical thinking.
Okay, but the goal
is to provide the
is
tools.
to create tools to develop informed, empowered, and engaged students.
Provide. To provide those tools.
Provide
Not to create them, but
tools.
to provide them.
Provide tools, or the tools, to develop informed, empowered, and engaged students. Okay.
So these are the possible goals that we can meet our vision with, right? And you're gonna run them by your staff, Bill, to see if how these would be measured?
No, I'm not running them by my staff. I'm going to take them from you guys, and we will do the work to try to figure out how we would measure these, and we will reflect that back to you. And you will say, subpar, go back to the drawing board, or I like that, let's do this differently.
Okay.
You've given us the goals, it's our job to tell you how we would
Also, Bill,
aspire to measure them.
could they be asked if from this statement, some goal just really screams at them that we haven't come up with?
Well, I could make, I will do whatever the board wants me to do. I want to answer that question too.
Did we miss something, Bill?
It's really important to come right out of the gate and give some guidance to the creators of your system. What are the parameters of financial realities that you want the design to be made within? Because right now, you're just saying, hey, make it happen. I can do that, but I don't want to do a lot of extra work if there are parameters and guidance that this board would like to give during the creation of a system.
So wouldn't the goal be figure out, take into account the funding system as it exists when we're doing this. I mean, right now, I would say, figure out the number that you can, figure out the spending threshold number for the entire district and don't ever go over it. I mean, we're all over it at this point. Fix that in the creation of the new district. Stay
Just
under
tell me-
that
I'd
spending.
Just
rather
tell
be
me what
fiscally
you want.
responsible.
Bill, I think that would be part of the balancing fiduciary responsibility to our community with the provision of resources. Oh, I'm sorry, that didn't make it into the
Yeah,
eventual
so
vision, sorry.
let's,
But I think that's.
right, so that's got to be a goal, right?
That could be a goal.
Let's do that, Al.
Read that again.
Wouldn't that come under the communication or the community part where we were talking about,
Responsibility as a community.
responsibility to the community?
Yeah, no,
I think we need to address the fiscal and the communication separately. I think we need to put a goal on.
It's all part of the community. We communicate with the community, we're obviously fiscally responsible to the community.
I think that's the obvious part is what we need to make sure they see in the numbers format, not just in a hi, how are you format.
So how does the financial goal get worded? And is it a sub of community or is it its own goal?
To be fiscally responsible to our community.
So it's under the community part.
How do you measure that? You measure that by your budget. And besides, that's up to his staff to figure out how they can measure that.
I think, isn't that measured in the budget vote? If we were fiscally responsible, probably is okay, and if we're not fiscally responsible, we get told to do it again.
I'm sure that's the way it really works. Not all.
Yeah, well, that's the way it
Budgets
should
pass, that we're fiscally responsible.
So how do you want to put that in there?
I want to create an education system that meets the needs of our students at the most reasonable price, focusing on creating a system that meets the needs of our students first. I think if we tell Bill going out, right out of the gate, that your spending threshold is going to be $14,000 per student, that what he's going to produce for us may be different than if we say, provide us with the best possible educational model, since we truly, and Emily can probably tell us more, don't know exactly what the funding formula is going to be going forward. So rather than trying to backdoor everything from a funding formula that's moving currently in Montpelier, let's ask Bill to provide us with the best possible educational opportunities, and we will then come up with the finances after. Keeping in mind that I think Bill knows that we can't spend $21,000, $22,000, $25,000 per student.
You have to start from the student, but you guys are going to have a conversation about investing your neighbors and communities' hard-earned dollars in a way that you can direct your administrator to make tough decisions. We've had this challenge for the last couple of years where we're not really getting down to the crux of how do we decide on what do we invest in and what do we not invest in. Because I can build whatever you want me to build, and then you'll say that's okay or not okay. But there's got to be some parameters of what you want me to try to get to. And we don't have to know it now, but we have to get there. I mean, we can say our fiduciary responsibility and be fiscally responsible, making sure that it's the needs of the students. That's we can start there, but eventually we're going to have to get down to some much more challenging conversations, because we can build a system where it's $15,000 a student or it's $22,000 a student, and there's decisions to be made all throughout there. And I think we owe it to our communities to have those conversations. So I guess, long story short, you don't have to decide. I know that you guys all want to be fiscally responsible, and I know that the student is at the center. And so maybe you just want to have that these decisions will be made based on the student in a fiscally responsible manner. And then we can get to those details as we flow through it. Maybe that's the broad statement you want, the broad goal.
I think so for now.
Mm-hmm.
So rephrase what you said, because that's basically what you said. I just want to get it down.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Well, I'm talking, not typing.
And then when we're adding new goals, we need to have some sort of goal.
Whoa, wait, I gotta get this goal.
Yeah, don't jump ahead of him, he's typing.
Say it again.
Go ahead.
No, get it. You said it, so I want to make sure I got it down.
You did a better job, Bill.
Students and fiscal responsibility.
Student-centered.
Student-centered, fiscally responsible.
Okay, I can go from there. Thank you.
You're welcome. You got another one?
We need to have some sort of goal that addresses our responsibility and our infrastructure, our buildings.
Yeah.
We have a lot of building needs that probably should have been goals for many years that we've been ignoring.
Part of that is a safe environment.
I think we're beyond the just kind of assuming that we're going to take care of our buildings. I think we need to state it. We're going to get to that later in the agenda.
I've lost the agenda here. Well, do we actually have engineering studies update piece?
That would be Bill.
So I'm going to put down responsibility for assets and infrastructure for now.
That's under number 9 in the agenda, Joe.
Do we actually have new news?
I do have an update on that.
Okay. So we've got another goal that deals with buildings
Okay.
and maintaining the physical plants.
Anything else? If not, can we move on?
I think that about sums it up. I mean, we've covered. Oh, I can't. Yes.
Because we said we would, to support families and parents as integral components of a student's education.
Does that tie to the vision?
Well, everyone said that it's the needs of the community, but we would address and announce families and parents in the goals. So that addresses and says the words families and parents.
But we create the building advisory committees that parents are going to serve on and community members. So they've already got a voice there with students and everything.
In the advisory committee.
Say what you said again?
To support families and parents as integral components of a student's education.
That feels more day-to-day than an advisory committee does to me. We know students are more successful when they have more community, parental, family, whatever involvement in their education.
Describe what you mean by parental involvement.
Sorry, we don't have a policy on that yet.
Homework.
That's
Not a drop-off
that's my job that I have to do, right?
I
I
visit that before.
Correct.
I have to reflect back
Okay.
how we would measure.
Because I'm like, how do we measure that? How do?
To support families and parents as integral components of a student's education. Okay. Yeah, I'll take that challenge on.
Okay. Anything else? You got enough, Bill?
9,
So, we don't, do we need to make a motion to task you with,
No, I think we can
line
just direct.
measurable?
I think I got the message.
Okay, Bill, make it happen, okay?
We can
Thanks.
just direct Bill or ask Bill.
Okay. We're asking, Bill, we won't direct you.
What do we need, Emily?
Nicely.
One of the other things we need to do is make a commitment for future meetings to get out of here on time.
Well, we'll be out by 9, don't worry.
Yeah, Bill will be extremely efficient.
Goals are done. Administrative reports. Everybody's read Bill's cabinet report. Does anybody have any questions for Bill on his cabinet report, or can we just,
Awesome as usual.
yeah, just make the comment, awesome as usual, and move right along?
No, I just say that, you guys all have a copy, and I brought hard copies if you'd like to take it and read it. Attached as well, I sent the education legislative report. I would take a read on that. They're coming fast and furious about every 10 days now.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot more going on at a much faster clip than in the past. So I would just stay well aware of what's going on up in Montpelier. I will keep you well informed. Please keep checking your email. If you have any questions, let me know. I would just say that this past couple weeks has been a real focus on reviewing our safety and security around all of our buildings. We've been very proactive. We've been working with this safety liaison since September, who has visited every single one of our schools. He helped us set up a work plan for 12 to 18 months starting in January. We stipended the Dean of Students at Leland and Gray to run us through that for the next 18 months. We have a community safety meeting that happens every 6 to 8 weeks. Drew is on that with myself, along with the state police and Grace Cottage and the road commissioners and other first responders, all the principals. We have tasks every single month where we are reviewing what we're doing and updating our emergency operations plans. You can never be you can never rest. You always have to, it's continuous improvement. And we have a very good team that is trying to get better and better and better over time. Our engineering studies will help us understand what our responsibilities are with the buildings. But that has been our focus to recommit to all of that. I went to a safety forum in Whitingham yesterday. Bob and I are on a Windham County Safety Review Forum Friday night at 6 o'clock at Brattleboro Area Middle School. If you all like to attend, you're more than welcome. Just to get an update on what all the schools are doing, what the school system's doing, how they're integrating. Not to, make Drew blush or anything, but he's been incredibly important in tying all these things together. Comes and sees me at the office. It's been very helpful to have somebody who's tied into everything way outside of our world and keep us on track. So it's been very helpful. But yeah, if you have any questions on any of this, please just let me know.
Thank you. Anyone? No. All right, so, old business, blizzard bags.
So I contacted the AOE at the direction of the board just to find out about, has the AOE ever discussed this? What's the possibility? They were unaware that New Hampshire did this, but I was in contact with the deputy secretary, and she did send me the different statutes that it would all come into play with, attendance and things of that nature. So with the board's permission, I can make this kind of a long-term project over the next several months, just to kind of get an idea of what steps would be necessary, and report back to you guys when it's non-winter time, maybe like in September, and say, here's what the statute says, here's what the possibilities would be, here's what the ask would be, all those kinds of steps, so that I could do it in the off-season, but do it in a timely manner. So if we wanted to make some sort of request in the fall, we would be prepared to do that.
Awesome. Works for me.
Okay. Our annual meeting is 2019. I have copies here for you. I sent them to everybody. It's pretty simple and pro forma. I did follow up with the attorney because I wanted to make sure that we were focused on what kinds of questions we could ask, trying to get ahead of the timeline for when people are elected in different towns under different systems. What is the mechanism to make that happen? So, for example, if Townsend wants to vote the Townsend representatives, which come up in 2019 from the floor, but Newfane wants to elect the Newfane representatives from the Articles of Agreement, this board's going to have to take some sort of action in between now and when town meeting happens next year in order to make that happen. So I've engaged our attorney to go through all the steps of what would be necessary. Preliminarily, we would have to have a special meeting of this board. You guys would have to amend the Articles of Agreement, because right now it's all elections must be done by Australian ballot. And I would have to make sure that we can legally have different towns be able to do that. So I'm in the process of getting all that information. But what it may mean is that sometime in September, you guys might have to have a special annual meeting in which you are going to ask the voters to amend some language in your Articles of Agreement. And you'd have to have an informational meeting to explain why you're doing that. Mm-hmm. And so I'm working with the attorney to figure out what are your language options to give you the most flexibility in the future in the most narrow way of changing that amendment. So it's nothing you're going to do at the annual meeting, but I just wanted to let you know that your request to make that happen is in process, and I will report back to you about the mechanism to make that legally happen. We have time. Isn't a rush. But as people ask and start talking to you, I want you guys to all understand.
Thanks.
Also on the 19th, or April 3rd, Article 3, you're going to have to ask the moderator to pass over that, because technically the voters have to decide how much you guys are going to get paid. You can't do that from the floor of the annual meeting. So that's another reason that we want to have some sort of special.
Nobody gets paid this year.
No one's going to get paid this year. Even though they offered you, what, $100? Is that what they offered you last year?
I forget.
A pittance.
I think it was $100. It wasn't even that. So anyways, we would do that, we would retroactively do it. We'd have those 2 articles that happened. But I just found that out today when I was hearing back from the attorney, as he reviewed all of our articles of agreement, that even though last town meeting we did that, it doesn't hold legally because it needed to be on an Australian ballot.
The compensation needs to be on Australian ballot.
Yes, until you change that. So that'll be another thing. So a normal thing, I was asking for scenarios, is that this board would have the power to do things up to a certain amount of money. You know, $100,000, $50,000, so boiler breaks or whatever, things of that nature.
Got it.
So those are ongoing conversations, just trying to prepare you for April 3rd. So April 3rd basically is a pretty simple night, but we'll have an opportunity to talk to the public as well.
Good.
Cool. Anybody got any questions? No? All right, so tell us about the engineering.
Engineering study,
Studies.
Newbrook happened on 3/12. Townsend happened today, and Jamaica happens next Monday. And you all will get a full detailed, about a 60-page report on each one of those buildings. Leland and Gray's already done. So your Buildings and Grounds Committee, which I believe is Drew, Al, and Joe, you guys will probably have that in your hands in May, all 4 buildings. And so then you'll start to get a clean picture of the assets you are all going to be responsible for.
That can be made readily available to the public.
I will take direction from the board about whatever the board wants me to do.
I think it should be readily available to the public.
I don't think we're hiding anything.
No, I know, I'm just saying, I think it should, as far as, I don't know if
Sure.
we should post them on the website, you know, or link to them or something,
Yeah.
because.
So when I have them all in hand, I'll ask for direction from the board,
All right.
and we'll go from there. That's all I got for you.
All right, thank you. We don't have any policy stuff, any policy issues tonight, do we?
We're all caught up on policy except
Thank
for E1, which we are waiting for this fall, Bill,
Yes.
for the lawyers to.
On the advice of counsel.
Yes.
We are hoping that the VSBA and the AOE and the legal counsel for the VSBA and the AOE have that conversation so that title, so all the people are talking to each other and they give us a much clearer picture about what direction this board should go. All of us.
And are we also going to look at the weapons policy? I want to bring that up. I think we should actually revisit the weapons policy because there's been some controversy over it in different schools.
I think that actually you guys would be a good pilot discussion that you can bring to this board.
Okay.
Just tell me when you want it on the agenda, Ken, and we'll put it on.
You got it.
All right. Okay, so we're left with the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I will second that motion.
All right. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Well done.
Yes.
Thank you.
I just sent you
All
all
in favor?
the work you guys did tonight.
Hey, we made it out before 9.
Joe, I have to say,